3. Hi, I'm Kate Olson, and I'm here with Dari Arrington, and we're going to have a soul talk this evening. It's kind of similar to the soul talk I had a few weeks ago when we were talking about finding calm in the chaos. Only I thought that we might not be giving a really balanced or fair perspective, or be able to, since we were two older white women. So I asked Dari if he could give the perspective of a millennial Black man who, has had some different experience. And before we get started, Dari, could you introduce yourself, tell people a little bit about you?
Absolutely. Well, my name is Dari Arrington. 28. I live in Seattle, Washington, originally from Chicago. I am a K-1 teacher in an elementary school, the north side of Seattle. And I'm a millennial. I'm a millennial, African-American millennial, to be exact. I college graduate and sports fanatic. I think there's a better word than fanatic. I'm just super obsessed. Super obsessed. But yeah, that's me.
Okay, well, I know Dari because, or initially I know Dari because he's a friend of my son's, but I've gotten to know him because he's been on my radio show as well over his sports fanaticism. But now we're talking about a little different subject, and Dari and I already had a little conversation, and I was kind of, I don't know how to describe it. I was shocked and I was not happy when I heard how Dari felt as a young Black man. Like, he mentioned to me that he does not feel real comfortable when he gets in his car and drives somewhere because, he's afraid that he might get stopped by the police. And, nobody likes to be followed by a policeman. You feel like you're going to get stopped and get in trouble then, but to feel that way just every time you get in the car, that would be a big stress. Do you want to comment on that, Dari?
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely rough, and I think what really pushed that is seeing a lot of the media display this, from social media to just news, and so when you see it a lot, it just builds this horror, this fear around you, and because you can relate to the individual in the video or the picture via color of skin. And for me, being a young African American male, those images and videos are pretty much African American males that are being bullied and gunned down, and every time they're in the vehicle. And so it put this fear in me. So every time that I drive, I'm watching out for the cops more than what a normal person would.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm a clean driver. I have everything that I need, all the proper documents for me to be behind the wheel of a car. But yet I don't feel safe. I don't feel comfortable to drive my car and be stopped at a light and fearing. I'm always looking in my rear view mirror, like, they're a cop. So, but I really think that it just comes from me seeing a lot of this at such a high frequency
Mm.
that it creates that type of fear, because I see my own people being
So
assaulted and whatnot.
this is something I didn't ask you before. So
Hmm.
how is, like you grew up in Chicago and
Hmm.
moved from there. How is it different or the same? Or how is being in Chicago compared to Seattle?
Seattle. Well, I definitely say that it's different. It's different because, one, the cities are completely different in size. Different in size. The energy here in Seattle is more passive. It's a lot of passiveness. In Chicago, it's direct. I would even go on a limb and say that Chicago's not as direct as New York, but it's definitely direct as far as Midwest goes.
Mm.
And when you got the typical weather differences, uh, but when it comes to just communities,
Mm-hmm.
I want to say that it's a lot the same. And I say that because how segregated the cities are. Now, Seattle is more progressive. It's tech driven. Chicago is it's already an established city. So Seattle is
Feel
more
like
up and
Seattle
coming.
is segregated? I know
Yeah, yeah,
that
I do.
there's large populations of different groups of people in different
Hmm.
places,
Yeah.
but like in my neighborhood where I live,
Hmm.
there's pretty much a mix of people from everywhere.
Hmm.
So
Yeah,
I
and
definitely don't feel it's as segregated as it used to be.
yeah, I definitely being here in Seattle, I see a lot of the different like ethnic groups and stuff like that because of the technology and tech here.
Mm.
So you have those variety of individuals. So you see this on a day, but it's really like, okay, this group of individuals are here, this group of individuals are there, and they just seem to be really placed in these certain areas where it's not where people are kind of
You,
unifying.
yeah, do you think it's based more on race or economy?
Kate, it is hard to say.
Maybe a
It's
mix.
really hard to say. Yeah, maybe a mix. Um, Being where we are in the current times in the millennium, I would say that it's definitely a mix. Yeah, it would be definitely mixed because in Chicago, I know growing up there, it's you can feel it. It's so hardcore. I mean, downtown Chicago is the central where everybody is. You got all races kind
Mhm.
of engaging. But once you hit east, west, north, and south, it just becomes like a dominated, predominant, whatever race you are, areas. And it's been like that till it's grown. You go over here, you got Latinas and their culture. You got that Chinatown and where the African Americans are and the whites, and it's just
Yeah,
like these are their neighborhoods. And I kind of feel like that here in Seattle, but majority of
much
individuals,
smaller because
yeah, but much smaller.
the population is smaller.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah, so I hope that makes sense when I'm,
yeah.
saying the differences and whatnot, what I see of the two cities.
So we were talking a little bit about the reactions you get from people when you're out in public and that, and was that the same in Chicago or different?
Well, here, um, once again, I don't know if it's race or just the economy, but here I get the reaction of um, it's actually two. There's the reaction of this is a black man, so everything that's associated with a black man it's me. And so not sure what that individual thinks, but it doesn't seem to be always friendly. And the other one is, this is a Black man. This individual can help this company or our business benefit because it shows our side that we are equal employers and we need this. And so it's like two different reactions just depending on where I go.
Still, even in this day and age, you feel like you're treated like the token Black man sometimes.
Yeah, and just hearing conversations a lot too. And it's kind of hard to touch on it because I never want to come off as a person that is conceited or just overly confident or egotistic or narcissistic or whatnot, but it is a reality. And this is definitely some things that I've noticed with the 5 years of me being here. It's those two things. And Chicago, it's just, you're Black. You know?
Yeah, I know that they have a much higher percentage, but I don't know what it is. Do you have any
percentage in African American culture or the communities there? I don't know the percentages off the top of my head. I do know that the population is bigger.
Yeah.
Bigger just because the city's bigger.
Yeah. You don't know what the percentage is, though. I've heard.
No, I definitely don't know off the top of my head.
Because Seattle is one of the lower, actually. The whole
West
is.
Yeah, exactly. It is. I just don't know those actual numbers. But if we looked at it, I mean, it just shows. I mean, just common sense because of the difference in size of the cities. Mm-hmm. And then if you go back in history, a lot of people, African Americans, migrated to the city of Chicago. And some did take it up here in Seattle, but not that many went northwest. Mm-hmm. So, but yeah, don't know the exact numbers.
So, and then the other thing we were talking about is, the reaction you get when you go someplace with your girlfriend. And
yeah. Mm-hmm. So my girlfriend is Caucasian. So this goes way beyond me before interracial dating. I think that's been a thing for many, many years.
Yeah. Still, some people don't react.
Yeah. No, still some people don't react. I must say that I find it here in this city, Seattle, that it's tolerated more. I do see it a lot. I see it a lot. But then again, it's people want to see you with individuals that look like you. And me, I never understood that, but I mean, I'm open to wanting to hear why.
Well, it does take people time to change their attitudes because most of it is learned,
Yeah.
Did you happen to watch my video that I did with the other lady on finding the calm in the chaos?
I did.
You did? So you heard what I said about how I reacted way back when a Black man
and I think you were telling me when you and I were having conversation off the record.
I didn't know that I had that feeling until I encountered the situation. And I wasn't really, I was more or less telling him, or thinking that he was discriminating against Black women by by going to places where there were white women. And, first of all, why should I have, any say in who he goes out with? But it came probably without me really realizing from my background where, my parents had been, they had been raised with very bigoted attitudes that they had to learn. So,
I mean, even with my girlfriend now, I mean, when we talk about her grandparents,
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't say that they're all on board 100% that she's dating a black man, but you
Yeah.
know, it's a different age, and you know, it's just like, hey, these individuals they are who they are. They're stuck in their ways, and you know, this is, as long as there's not any harm, you know, we deal with it. And it's the same thing with my grandparents and whatnot. They just kind of
Yeah.
from different eras.
Yes. And it was at one time people thought, well, we should be nice to each other, but we don't want to mix the races, you know.
Yeah, we don't exactly. You said something that I wanted to touch on. I'm blanking about the African American man and him being putting himself in places where uh, there's white women
Yeah,
and dating.
yeah. Well, you know, one of the things that he said to me that I didn't mention before is when he was trying to explain to me why he had come there, where, you know, there
Hmm.
was only one other, an older black lady, and him were the only people that weren't white or Asian. But when I asked him why he would come and where there weren't any black women, he told me that he had a daughter that,
Mm.
you know, and what he felt about her dating was he didn't, uh, he wasn't focused on what race the person that she would meet and,
Hmm.
you know, find was, that he just wanted her to find the best person.
Yeah, yeah,
So um, he made a good point.
yeah. Well, it's the same with my folks. My mom was didn't it didn't matter who what the girl looked like. For me, it was just about, like, you know, does she meet your standards, and
Well, that's what
can
I
she?
feel now about my
Mm,
son also.
yeah.
But, you know, as I said, that's why you have to be compassionate and tolerant to people, because a lot of times they have past learning that they have to
Uh-huh.
work through. It doesn't really mean that
Well,
bad people because they have these attitudes, because, you know, they might have been bombarded with it at Sunday school when they were.
yeah, no, it is very true, and it's a real thing. I think for me, and I really can't say 100% that I may take more. I get more stress from being in an interracial relationship than she does. I mean, she gets her flack, but she would have to be tough because I can't speak for her. But I know for me as a black man and dating a white woman, you get that. It's I can't really put my hand around it, but it's a certain type of flack you get for doing it. And I remember putting on my Facebook
Oh
about
yeah, I
something.
saw you.
Yeah,
Yes, it's
and it was just the truth because I had someone really challenge me and question my my love for my culture, my knowledge from my culture. And my whole thing was, it doesn't matter what woman I choose to be with in an intimate setting. It has nothing to do with my knowledge of where I'm from, what I know, who I am. And I think that it kind of gets eliminated or just erased as a black man, I'll say, to know these things. And
just because of the history of it.
mm-hmm,
You know, it implies that you have the same reasons as were the stereotypes.
mm-hmm.
And yeah, that,
Yeah, and it's a constant battle. You know, I have people that joke on it. For me, I'm such an open person. So when people are saying things, you know, I can take a joke. I have very thick skin. I'm from a city of people with thick skin. Um, but it's like, you know, it's a real thing. Like, this is my real life. Like, I'm actually with a white woman. And so we have to go through these battles together, because when we talk about starting a family together, our child will be biracial,
Mhm.
and so that's a whole nother conversation, because it's like, what do you teach the kid? Like, your
Yes.
father's from this, and this is how your father grew up. Your mother's from this, and this is how your mother. So you want to be able to have an understanding with your partner where you're not confusing a child or picking sides or whatnot. You want to understand, like, this is why mommy and daddy came together.
Mhm.
So, and this and that. So it's a big picture. For me, I just love the challenge. And me, I love challenges from all kinds of
Well,
ways.
I'll give you something that the man that I talked to way back
Mm-hmm.
when we were through with our conversation, I asked him, when I realized what I was feeling, I asked him if it bothered him. And he told me, he said, no, it doesn't bother me. It's just something you have to work out.
Yeah, it's true when you think about it. You're like, well, yeah, maybe it is just me that I have to work out, because
No, not
obviously this
you.
person.
It's like,
No,
okay,
none. Yeah,
it was me that I had
you.
to
Yeah,
work
you
that
being there.
out.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, I'm following you.
And that he could say that,
Mhm.
you know, he was in a good place as far as, how he was.
Yeah, I must admit that for a while, um, I was a little nervous, because I've had a few different white women as girlfriends, um, and I was a little nervous to fully embrace it. But I've always been attracted
Mm.
that way. I mean, I'm a dark-skinned male, and so I've always been attracted to lighter complexion. Um, but my very first kiss was from a white girl, and I was in kindergarten. So I like to always say that the genesis of that
Well,
whole situation started
there's
then.
probably really no significance to that.
No, it's probably no significance, but
As,
I
because
always
as
run with it.
kids,
Yeah.
we we don't see those things, and that.
No, we don't see them at all. And yeah, so I'm not relating it in that sense. It's just for me as a developed man now, and looking back, retrospect, I remember my very first kiss being, a white girl. And so I play on that. I play on that as this is the genesis of it all. But the truth of the matter is that this has just always been me. I've just always been that way. And
Traditionally, not always, but people are somewhat attracted to either things that they're not or things that are very different
yes,
because
yes,
um, you know, there's that, like something that stands out.
yeah. I mean, I've always been told opposite attracts. So that
Yeah,
I've always heard that.
when it's not so prevalent now, but when I went
Mm-hmm.
to Japan with my friend, she grew up there, and she said, like, everybody's going to stare at us, and you know, we're going to be the center of attention because of being, fair skinned, blonde, and uh, it it was that way to some degree, but not as much as when she was a kid growing up there. Because
Mm-hmm.
now, like, there were tall Japanese girls and there were blonde Japanese girls, and
Mm-hmm.
there's
Yeah.
a lot more diversity.
Absolutely, I agree. Definitely agree. But it's definitely being a millennial, black man, and today, my views are they're just kind of like in different spots. I know that I feel like we touched on earlier. I feel very fearful behind the wheel, being the whole cop situation. But also, um, I still feel as I'm looked at as a threat. Even though I carry myself as a light, and I put information out there as a light, and my occupation is me being in position to be a light. And but I'll be on a bus, and everybody else will have someone sitting next to them, or there will be oncoming traffic and completely skip me. And um and it doesn't bother me. It's just like, this is a real thing. This is a thing, and I'm not losing my mind here that I'm seeing this, because it happens every time. And when there is a time where someone sit next to me, it's just like, just kind of clenched purse or clenched bags and
Maybe more
things of that.
so toward you, but I've heard the same thing from my son,
Mm-hmm.
that people react to him fearfully
Yeah.
just because he's a male. Like he's mentioned to me that in the grocery store, if he just casually says something friendly to, especially if it's, a young woman, that they will react fearfully to him, and
Mm-hmm.
that
I
kind of
mean, a lot of it
react.
is definitely because of where men and women are in today. But I definitely notice, just on a different, deeper level, me being an African American, that it shows, because I see males that look really threatening on the bus and public transportation, just walking, and they're white. And then there's individuals that will still sit next to those individuals. And so I see it from both sides. Me being a male, it's just, I have that, I'm against the wall, just because off principle, and just how, you know, everything that's been happening to women for, since earlier this year, and all the allegations and things and rapes and all those things. So
Yeah.
I have that against me
Well,
as
that's been
well.
going on for a long time, but I think
Yeah.
the fact of it all being brought up
Yeah, just
has,
completely publicized, really.
has increased both the awareness and the reaction of people.
Yeah, I totally feel what Chris is saying there, because it's happened to me as well, and a few other individuals I know. That's just kind of the times we're in, and that's what happens. But um, I don't think that we are going anywhere forward when it comes to racism. I don't think we're moving forward. I think we are. I don't think we even moved forward. I think, because where I came into the world, it's
Well,
just like, this has
I
been.
don't think as a society we've moved as far as I would like to see it in the time that, I've seen a lot bigger range of time than
Yeah,
you were able to, because you were.
yeah. Hmm.
And so, being as, I thought we were starting to move forward way back when,
Hmm.
like about the time I got out of college, and now I'm seeing that some people are maybe even back further than that. And
Yeah.
it's
Um,
just that, especially with the Trump presidency and the things that is brought up.
yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
It's, I did not even imagine that there was a large group of people who had these thoughts and ideas.
Yeah. It's interesting. I mean, just for me being present in these times through my 28 years, it always seems like this has always been what
Yeah,
it
I'm
is.
sure it does.
and
But
and so it's like, I don't to say if it's gone backwards, it's hard for me to say unless I just open a history
Well,
book or something.
because, like I did see progress.
Yeah, see, for you, you can say that. You can
Yeah, I
say it.
did see progress. I saw my parents came, they moved out here from North Dakota.
Mm-hmm.
So, it was a whole big learning experience for them.
Yeah.
But I saw them change in their lifetime.
Mm-hmm.
And, like I kind of thought, society was moving in that direction. And it seems like a whole group of people, kind of stayed back in the prior sort of times and attitudes. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it's hard for me to believe that I've heard people say some of the things that they have said. And it's not just around, black-white relations. It's, about anybody who's different, people that come from anywhere that aren't, and
I know what you mean. It's hard to process that, and you're wild.
Yeah.
You're wild. And same here. Even when I'm around individuals that are 10, 15 years older than me, and they're joking, so they say, but it's even the fact that is something that is in their head.
It's okay to say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I'm wild as well. I've been wild. I honestly don't know because how I am, it's hard to really say. Like, I feel like I presented myself as this person as being positive and putting great energy out there.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like I don't have any real hope in the change.
Real hope in what? The racial?
For racial. I think that it just, for me to continue to try my best to surround myself, my loved ones, around people that we could relate to, not mattering what the race are.
That is definitely, everybody needs that in their life.
Mm-hmm.
But unless you step out and challenge those antiquated ideas in other people, that's the only way they change.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's gonna take it takes the person to actually challenge those things, challenge that individual's thoughts.
Even, sometimes people don't have to be challenged necessarily. They just have to, be confronted in a way that allows them to learn.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times, okay, there's like stereotypes, or I don't know, ideas, beliefs that they have, that nothing has ever come along to tell them that this is not correct.
Yeah.
And unless they ever encounter, a person that's different from them, they're not going to know it.
No, it's so true. It is so true. It's absolutely true. I mean, challenge is a strong word, but I still think that, a lot of people, they should be challenged and introduced.
Well, people should start out, and we have to teach them as children. Like, if you do have a child, you need to start teaching them as a child, not to be suspicious of somebody who's different from them. And there are things you have to teach them that are in that vein. But
I deal with it every day at school.
To be curious and open, because you have to have that side of you too. when I was a kid, and this doesn't have anything to do with race, but we moved into a neighborhood, and the neighbors were all, really friendly, except the guy right next door to us. He lived in a small little house with trees all around it.
Mm-hmm.
And he had a fence, and he didn't allow any of the kids in his yard. And he had had throat surgery. He was an older man, and so he had this funny voice. I think he had cancer, but that wasn't, common that people
Mm-hmm.
talked about it back then. And so I wasn't supposed to talk to him. None of the kids were supposed to talk to him. There were all these rumors about, what he would do if you went in his yard.
Right.
And I'm not sure really why. I just had a feeling that those things were not true. And our house had a hill, and I would sit up on the top of that hill and I would watch him. I would watch what he was doing. And I saw that he had all these bird feeders, and he fed the birds and the squirrels, and he had this dog that, in fact,
Yeah.
the dog became like my best friend. The dog would come and sit on the hill with me while I was watching him.
Mm-hmm.
And, observing what he did, I just knew that, he wasn't a bad person. And so eventually I talked to him, and he was friendly and nice and just cordial. I talked to him over the fence. And, but because of everything I'd heard, and, just to be on the cautious side, I told him that he should meet my parents, and that, they would be friendly to him. But at the very end, I said, but my dad does have a gun. I wanted to make sure, in case I was wrong.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But he did. He ended up being friends with my parents. And then after he was friends with my parents, the rest of the neighborhood slowly realized that he wasn't this, terrible ogre that everybody.
It sounds like a novel or a movie.
Yeah, somebody had said that to me before, but I was 3 at the time.
What?
I hadn't read any book. Yeah, that's when we moved into that house. I was 3, so.
Wow.
But see, that's, like, yeah, kids shouldn't be talking to strangers, but, kids do also have their own sense of things.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And I knew he wasn't a bad person.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like kids have this intuition. When they know someone is safe, not a good person. I see this every day with the kids that I teach, and just especially how fast they embraced me. Because one, I'm the only Black man in the school, and they were able to just really embrace that and become very comfortable, and just really attracted to my charisma and personality and things. And I'm completely different than they are. But I do know that there's been some times where there's been some kids where just like, asking me, why are you Black? And stuff like that.
Well,
And
and you just need to give them an answer. Like,
oh yeah.
I guess, this was before I was 3, like when I was 1.5 or something. And we'd just gotten to Seattle, and my mom was carrying me on a bus, and there was a Black lady sitting next to us. And I asked her why she didn't wash her face.
Oh.
My mom was like, petrified. She
For sure.
embarrassed, and the lady just looked at me and she said, "Oh, I washed my face, honey. This is the color of my skin."
Yeah.
And I just looked at her and I said, "Oh."
Just, yep. That's kind of the reaction from the kids when I told them why I was black. I was just like, oh, but
Well,
it is not something that they're used to. But
well, if I had been, exposed to people that had different colored skin before that, I probably wouldn't have asked that question. Or if books had people with different, who look different, that's something they do now, which is good.
Yeah, it is more in the classroom. I've taken notice. There's more books with people,
Variety.
different races.
Yeah, but a kid, if they've never seen anybody, they're gonna ask questions.
Yeah, they do. I mean, kids are just straight up brutally honest. They're just indirect. They ask questions, which is completely fine with me. I mean, they're human beings. The certain questions that they ask,
Yeah, there's sometimes.
you be on top of them, but I just know that it is very hard to be a black man in today's world. And then it doesn't matter if you're super bright, intelligent, or not. Just the color of my skin alone makes things just 10 times harder for myself and others that can relate to that. And so, yeah, it's not it's
It
not
hasn't
something that,
changed as much as we'd like it to, because
yeah,
I have heard that same thing. Like, I've heard it from people on television that are like commentators, or
mm-hmm,
even our legislators, or I've heard them, our former president, Barack Obama. I mean, he described situations in his life that were like that.
yeah,
So
it's hard.
it doesn't matter who you are, but it still shocks me when, like, somebody that I've met and I know says things like that.
Yeah.
Because I know who you are.
Yeah, exactly. And the other side is I have a bunch of people that they just adore me, and they don't see me being just you're black, you're a
Well,
person, you're
after you know people, and that's what
that's
people
what happens.
are exposed to, you don't see them as, or most people, I mean, don't see them as their ethnic. I mean, you might know things about their ethnic background or that, but that's not how you see them. That's not who they are.
Absolutely. And so for you, you're definitely one of those individuals that see me as this person. And
Well,
but
that's
yeah, it's yeah, but just on the other side, it is very hard every single day, Kate. It's every day. My girlfriend, she sees it, even more.
yes, and I do, maybe not to the same extent, but any woman will know somewhat how you feel, because it hasn't totally improved either in that regard. But being a woman is not always easy, because you're seen, as a woman instead of as a person.
Yeah,
And
I definitely understand that.
it was, I'll have to say, it was worse a long time ago, because it is worse for any young woman.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, once you get a little older, you don't put up with it, basically.
Yeah.
But, you know, it was hard for me when I was young, and I've heard other young women now that are
Mm-hmm.
say similar things. So
Yeah, I definitely know where you're at with it. But it's a it's something that you have to make a decision.
and
This
so
is
why did white men get to decide that nobody else was acceptable? Why did we let them get away with that?
shoot, man. I don't know. I have no idea.
And then on the other hand, I know that some white men feel blamed, you know,
Mm-hmm.
for
Yeah,
they feel like they
this
shouldn't be lumped in with
yeah,
everybody else.
absolutely. And here's the other part. I was listening to one of my favorite comedians, and he touched on something that is really true. And I don't know how many people actually take the time to think about it, but it's hard being black, period, in America. It's really hard being a black man in America, because we got all these stereotypes, and we're looked at it in a certain type of light. Um, but the guy was saying, what about the white kids of the parents or grandparents that really support black culture? And being in this time frame, like, so white boys and girls,
You just went away.
uh-oh,
There you are.
okay, white boys and girls that are the same age as me and same time and how we came up. And so I think racism on that part isn't really like strong and outrageous. I mean, there's some things that are being said, but we're using this universal language through.
Well, I think I know part of what you're going to say, and it's something I've noticed too. It's
Okay.
that, okay, you get pressure from those, older black people who don't want to lose the culture.
Mm-hmm.
And also there's I guess I was listening to, there was a guy who wrote a book on that you don't have to just be not racist, you have to be anti-racist.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know who I'm talking about?
I don't.
Well, he was on this show, and um, back when I was like getting out of college, there was like the Black Panther movement. Have you
Mm-hmm.
heard about that? They were
Mm-hmm.
very, they said a lot of very radical or what word am I looking for? Things that,
Some strong stuff.
yeah, well, yeah, if you were a
Strong
white
language.
person, and especially if you were an older white person, it would have scared you.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a feeling that, or on that side, that you need kind of that over the top because things have been bad for so long.
Yeah.
And I'm not really sure how you can get past that.
Yeah, I don't think there's a way you get past it either. I mean, with time, anything. I do think that time allows change in a lot of different areas. But that in particular, don't really know. But I wanted to, before I forget,
Go ahead.
uh, I wanted to touch on where I was going exactly with the
Oh, go ahead.
comedian comment.
Oh, yeah.
Is that he was saying that not to, pretty much he was just like, let's not forget that those kids struggle a lot because it's a lot of pressure. It's like, yeah, they love the Black culture, they love the entertainment, the music, the fashion, and all of these things. But at home, the parents are traditional white, and how that the culture is, and then the grandparents are saying this. So it's like I can't really express myself. I can't really like what I like without it having to be this Black thing and this white thing. It's like, this is just what I like. I like this. And so he touched on that in the comedy special. And I thought that was really, really, that was great, because no one talks about that.
Yeah,
And
it's comes in many forms, not
yeah,
just
it comes. Yeah, it
it's
comes
like
in way.
not letting people be themselves.
Yeah, exactly. It comes in many forms, but he was more so just tying it into the whole racist thing,
Right.
racial thing. And I was like, yo, that is something. That's something to think about. It's something to think about, and it's a conversational starter. But I don't know if how many people are just really kind of open to having those
Well,
conversations.
it's hard on all parents, I think,
Mhm.
to let your child. I mean, it's a process to be able to
Yeah.
let your child or your grandchildren or whatever be themselves,
Mhm.
and that it's a learning process.
It really is. It is. Just things that I've talked to with my girlfriend or my friends, and um, even me, like how I will want my kids to be. It's just like, yeah, I will like that, but
Mm-hmm.
I gotta let them be who they are,
Yeah.
who they will be.
Yes.
And and that's something that I'm definitely know I'm gonna have to learn whenever I do
And
have some
I
kids.
don't know if Chris has talked to you about it, but he's mentioned it to me. So Chris talks a lot.
Yeah.
um, but he might have mentioned his Black friend also from Chicago, who he feels that is more white than he is.
You know what? I think he may have told me a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I think he may have told me. Yeah, Chris got a lot of stories. He tells me a lot of
yeah,
different things.
he
Yeah.
does. So I guess the synopsis here, and we've talked more than the half hour that we were planning on, but it's kind of like we still have a long way to go to.
Hmm.
And I think there's a lot of people who really want things to change.
I agree. I definitely think so as well. It's for me, like I've heard a lot of other um, individuals talk, and it's just being open to having conversations, real conversations, and not one, to have a real conversation. I think that you need to be one with yourself. You need to be able to understand yourself to a point where I'm not going to allow what this person thinks and their opinion to affect my reaction to it, or what's the word, invoke, or just provoke
Revolt.
a yeah, a certain type of reaction. I think is you have to be at a place where, one, you're mature, open, and fully listen and process what someone is saying before you engage and interact with your defense or your opinion. And that's, I think, enough people being that way can have real conversations, because there's a lot of people that say, yeah, I like to have real conversations. And there's a lot of defensiveness. There's a lot of like, well, hey, I don't think
Well,
I like that person anymore.
there's also got to be a level of self-awareness because,
Hmm.
you know, people see it all the time and it's hard to deal with. They want to present themselves as not racist or bigoted, or they want to be, I hate the word socially acceptable, but they want to be what people consider to be, um, good or,
Mm-hmm.
but that isn't really how they're feeling on the inside.
Yeah.
They don't want to admit it. And you have to admit it. You have
You
to
have
admit
to.
it before you can deal with it.
Yeah, you really have to. And I think for me, um, people have asked me, well, how did you get to being so mature and just kind of open? I feel like it's just accepting and embracing, like, this is life. This is my life. This is what I'm dealing with. How I go about things is going to determine my success. That's I don't think it's just really that simple. I don't think you could really go any further. It's like however I choose to go about things
Well,
is what's going to.
it's a way of thinking too.
Hmm.
And, on one hand, I have to, um, I said that my parents were bigoted and had some racist ideas when I was a kid.
Hmm.
But there was, something that they did right in that even though they had those ideas, they weren't completely closed to me being able to have and express different ideas.
Hmm.
So that allowed me to be able to um, not have to conform to
Yeah.
who they were. And
Yeah.
then that allowed me to raise my son differently.
Hmm.
And so, that's,
Yeah. I definitely understand that. Um, and with a lot of people thinking certain ways, there can be good. I always think there can be good found in anything.
yes. And what I was going to say about what you said is that your mom must have done something right in the way that
Hmm.
she raised you to be able to.
Yeah, oh my gosh, my mom is my ultimate inspiration. She did a lot. Um, the way she disciplined, I've tell the story a lot. The way that she disciplined my sister and I was, to me, is one that is how I'm going to go about discipline with my own. But it's just communication was everything for her. She will explain everything that she did, whether it was right or wrong, and she was open with my sister and I. So she wasn't trying to hide the world from us. She was like, "Hey, I'm confident as an adult woman to be able to handle my kids, and if they go veering off, then I'm gonna be doing what I need to do to get them to a place where they're balanced and everything." And she was just that committed to being that type of woman and completely pushing off her goals and dreams and being that woman. So like me, my sister and I, we watch tons of TV. We watch cartoons and everything. I mean, there wasn't really. I mean, we didn't watch like X-rated stuff and all that, but she wasn't like that open. But we were able to be like kids and watch cartoons and movies and things of, and it I know today's age, it's a lot of kids are not allowed to watch a lot of TV because of screen time and all that stuff. And it makes it hard for me to understand, how did I bypass it? How did I become how I am when I was exposed to so much?
Well, just what you've said about your mom, a lot of people don't know that one of the uh, best examples that a parent can ever be to a child that they're raising is to be able to say, I was wrong.
Yeah, she definitely would be, I wouldn't say she'd be the first one to say it, but we've heard it a
Well,
few
just
times.
the example of that.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know, because a lot of men
She.
think they have to be the example. They have to be always right,
Mhm.
and so they're right even when they're wrong, and that's not a good example.
Yes, that's not a good example, and she was like that. She did a hell of a job. I asked her not that long ago how she did it. She's like, she don't remember.
Well, it just sounds from what you said that she wanted to communicate, and that's
Yeah,
the main
she
thing.
definitely wanted to
You
communicate
know,
and make
like,
sure she didn't have to hide anything. It was like, this is the world. This is your times. This is what your mom sees. This is what is going on around you.
mm-hmm.
And she showed us this stuff, and we traveled a lot, so we were able to be in different types of communities and engage with um all kinds of different people. And so she had a plan with all of this.
Good.
And then there was a times where my sister and I mean, yeah, we didn't understand what was going on. We were mad because we would make friends and we have to leave and go there, but it ultimately
Yeah.
helped us in being able to adapt to a lot of situations.
But what you are telling me is I heard that from Chris too. That's one of
Hmm.
the things that he told me, that I did that as well. I would explain things to him and tell him what was going on, even when it wasn't necessarily what I wanted to be going on.
Hmm.
And, sometimes I felt like I shouldn't have told him so much.
Yeah.
But when he was growing up, he said that the fact that I did that made him feel better about the situation than in his other family,
Yeah.
where they wouldn't tell him why they did things or
Hmm.
what's going on. And uh, so,
Yeah. Well, um, I think that says it all, really, with my thoughts on being a millennial and black man in um, this country right now. Um, yeah.
so I have one more question, because
Yeah. Shoot.
you are, you're you.
Hmm. Me.
And but you have other friends, black friends your age.
Hmm.
Um, do they have the same attitudes and feelings as you, or is it?
Yeah. Uh, I overall think that they do. They articulate it differently than I would. Um, but yeah, I think that they do because um, we were always forward thinkers, and we would just always ask the question, well, man, why can't this just be like this? If this was like this, or if this was like that, stuff would just be so much better. It shouldn't matter because of this or because of that. And those things were happening a lot. So um they definitely wouldn't articulate it the way that I would, but you'd be able to pick up that they are on the same wavelength that I am, and how they feel about being a black individual in the current times.
Okay. Well, I think we probably should stop, or if we don't
Yeah,
be so
no
long,
worries.
nobody will watch it.
Yeah,
But thank you for talking and sharing your feelings and
you're
attitudes,
welcome.
thoughts. I actually know that there's a lot of 28-year-olds that wouldn't feel comfortable talking to me,
Hmm.
being so open, let alone,
Yeah,
about race. So,
yeah. Um, I mean, that's why I'm me.
okay. Well, you have a good rest of your night, and we'll talk again.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
All right. Thanks. Bye.
Bye bye.